Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Sarah. And today it's Cinco de Mayo, May the 5th, 2020. And you can find us on at Conversations with Sarah on Facebook and Sarah Oxidine on YouTube. And we have with us today Guru Dan. We
Hello.
have with us Holly and Rob and Lex. Welcome, everybody. Holly, would you like to give where people can find you as well?
Hello, I am Holly from quintessencehealingarts.com if you'd like to come over and take a peek.
All right.
Yay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have a special topic. Now, this topic started last week at the end of the last session. And I thought it was very important that we speak about this topic. So I asked Lex and Holly to come back to tell everybody what they were talking about. That's going to be very important for humanity moving forward when it comes to life and living. So, Holly, would you like to start?
Well, I'm trying to think where we left off basically, but
Well, let's start at the beginning so they'll know that.
all right. Well, this is my twin flame. Although I don't like that word, I like divine soul partner. So we're
Welcome.
both creators, and we discovered extremely early on that we had the ability to create new souls. And I don't mean babies that we birth, but literal new souls that went elsewhere. They had purposes. We could create any form, any function or purpose. And typically, depending on if it was male or female, or how sentient the being was created, it was how long it would stay, typically in our lower left abdomen. Both of us, we both can do that and hold them. So males are typically 3 days, females are typically 7 days, although I have
Figure that out too.
oh yeah.
Wow.
And my longest one, I kept Anastasia. She was very special, a triad. We created one every year on the same day for a purpose. They're galactic peacekeepers. So there's Octavia, Anastasia, and Blaze was the last one. But Anastasia was really special and had to be literally had to black box her soul so no one else could get to it. She was with me 16 days.
Why black box?
Well, just so everybody knows, what I mean by black box is, say it's it literally, you can put yourself in a black box if you have a very secret,
Intense shielding.
yeah, like nobody can penetrate it, nobody can hear what's going on inside. It's complete block of shielding. So there have been times I've had meetings where it was black boxed during the meeting, so no one could interfere, right? So she literally was black boxed in her gestation period, and all the way till her destination, which her older sister Octavia.
Okay, so I wanted to get into a discussion today about creating souls here on the planet with actual babies being created and souls going into the babies, and then those souls that may have come as well here, but they're not physical. Remember, we started to talk about that last week, and I just,
You can't hear.
Wow.
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm not
Almost.
so sure about
I have to say
physical
though,
babies.
Octavia though was one of those. She
uh-huh.
was one of the first and the most sentient. I mean, she spoke with me. She actually came out of me and played in the forest and ran around. You could see her, I couldn't. And I could sense her within 12 hours of creation. She was going through my memories and my all my knowledge and gathering all that. So she was really, really sentient and verbal, and she could come out of me to do things. So I'll mute myself.
All right. Lex, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm
Hey.
listening. Hey.
I'd like to introduce Lex. Lex is a midwife. And she's had a lot of experience with developing souls and birthing souls. And I wanted to get her perspective on this idea of physical bodies and non-physical bodies of souls that are incarnated here.
Mm-hmm. Well, just like Holly, I can speak from my own personal experience
Yes, please.
and share with you what I've come to understand through my experience of giving birth 6 times and also supporting other women to give birth as well, and being present at birth and supporting through pregnancy and after. Um, I don't call myself a midwife. I coined a term that I feel better suits what I do, and I call myself a conscious birthing guide. Conscious because it's you're wide awake and aware of the choice that you're making, in every moment. Birthing, obviously, because you birth in life, and then guide because the women that I say the couples that I tend to support, those couples really do know what it is they want to achieve, and they don't need somebody to show them the way particularly but they need somebody to like hold their hand and go with them. But it's important that the person going with them knows where they want to go and they've been there before. And
Yes.
so I feel that conscious birthing guide better describes what I do. Midwives are quite medical and they're quite hands-on. I'm not. I do not work with interventions. I don't administer drugs, and I don't interrupt the birthing process in any way, shape, or form. I'm like a doula in the sense that I'm there to nurture and care and love the woman through her pregnancy, to support her partner, to advocate for them both, and to hold space. And that is essentially what I realize that I do. I'm holding space energetically to allow the woman who has tuned in with her body completely, listening to her baby, allowing that baby to guide her all the way through that process up until the baby is being born, and obviously those precious moments following. And I'm very much in her energy. I find that when I'm birthing with women that I'm actually rebirthing myself as well. Now, when it comes to souls, what I've come to experience through my own births, especially the last one, the 6th baby, um, her soul spoke to me, told me that I'd conceived, told me where I needed to be. So I left my country in England and I went to Ecuador. told me that I wasn't to go to the establishment, so I never went to see a doctor or a midwife or anything like that. Told me all the circumstances of the birth, and some other details which seemed quite strange. So this soul told me that its name was Ebenezer, which led me to believe that, oh, maybe this is going to be a boy. Told me that it was from the sixth dimension. And at that time, I thought that's quite strange because I've heard of the fifth dimension, but not the sixth.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, okay. But I really had trust in what this baby soul was telling me. And what I seemed to work out is that the soul was not inside of the child, that the soul helped me to realize that the vehicle, i.e., the body, the life formation that was being created through splitting cells inside my body, there's a consciousness that's taking place as and when that's happening, and the soul of the child has not yet entered into that body. And what I witness when the baby takes its first breath, when it's born, um, I believe that that's the moment that the soul enters the body. However, some souls do enter just before, and some souls can enter after as well.
Mm-hmm.
But most have either gone in before or specifically in that moment.
So you're saying
So
at the first breath is when
breath,
the
correct.
soul comes through.
That's that gasp of air is
Yeah.
is the soul entering the life form, the baby, where the two are connected. So the consciousness that creates the body and the soul of the baby are connected, but the soul itself has not gone into the life form, and yet the consciousness is in contact with its soul, is the thing that gives all the baby, uh, like the knowledge of everything that's going on. So babies in the womb, they can do something REM, which is dream states, where the
Mm-hmm.
eyes are flickering. So this tells us that the baby's dreaming. Now, what could a baby possibly be dreaming of when it's not had a life yet? And
Interesting.
yet it is dreaming. And so therefore I have come to understand that it's the knowledge of the soul, because the soul is all expansive and has a completely different perception of awareness than us, who are limited to our five senses, and it's like the sixth sense of our five senses that are only experienced in the human body. Well,
Mm-hmm.
this is all information that's being passed between the soul and the life form. And now my purpose is why I support babies, or why I do birth, is because as Guru Dan was mentioning last week, the fracturing of the soul when the baby's born and the shattering, it's a form of aikido. When that baby is smacked on its bottom, well, it's the bottom of the baby's spine. And we all know that Kundalini resides at the bottom of the baby. So what it does is it fractures the baby's soul. And all of the traumas that are actually done um, on the human life by the establishment, they are all, um, to me, the greatest acts of violence upon human life. And they're all done to shatter the baby's soul. And that's why when most children are born and then we wake up and we become adults like us, we're always in this state of trying to find ourselves, know ourselves, search for parts of ourselves that seemingly are fractured and out there. And we're trying to pull ourselves back together to become a whole being.
Mm.
So it was set upon me by the universe and the soul of my child that my being there to usher these souls in was to stop that trauma from taking place, so that when the child comes in, it can come in with all of its sentience, as Holly was describing.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the parents, by choosing to be conscious and aware and allow the baby to guide to guide them, then why would it stop at birth? Um,
Right.
then what needs to happen is the parents need to continuously raise that soul a particular way to continue to allow that soul to be whole. And so, therefore, I recognized that when I was birthing with these mothers and fathers, it was as much about um, helping them to be parents, to be guardians of these souls. So it's not so much the parents impressing their way upon the child. It's more that this child has come through, and it is basically a teacher that you are going to learn alongside with, so that that soul is here to be it, the expression that it has come to be, rather than what you decide for it. A way to put that into context is like, some parents want the children to be a doctor, but
Yeah.
but that's not what the child's here to be, and then
No.
they force them in that way. Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
this is really recognizing the autonomy and what the soul is, and letting it be what it has come to be. And therefore we have to nurture and guide and love and support and learn along with, to allow the continuance of all that we have nurtured and grown and cultivated during the pregnancy and the birth.
Right.
So these souls. Do you have a question? Did you want to say something?
Well, I wanted to kind of look at this idea of hitting the Kundalini and it fracturing the soul at birth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Go on. Sorry.
no, I understand that it was only until I was 33 when I had the Kundalini awakening,
Yeah.
and I began to remember who I was meant to be here,
Right.
and it was it was a interesting experience because it was a lot of energy apparently
Yes.
that I wasn't aware that I was connected to
Yes.
until that point in time when it was just so much energy that I felt no connection to my entire life up until that time.
Right.
So I feel like I was one human being. I thought I was one person. And then all of a sudden, I became something else after the awakening.
Yeah. That's right.
So that's very interesting. You brought that up.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are going through this at this time. They're finding themselves, they thought themselves to be one way.
Hmm.
They thought themselves to live and become one way as
Hmm.
society has dictated to them.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden they're having an awakening, and they're awakening to who they are truly meant to be.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out because that is fascinating and for me very real.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's true for all of us, because if you can imagine that there are like therapists that
Yeah.
can look at you, and without you opening your mouth and telling them anything about your life, just by looking at you and you approaching them, they can tell you exactly how you were born.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that's a reality, it says a lot about how we are born, and like the correct way almost to do it, and the incorrect way, because there can be energetic blockages, there can be ailments, people can have like a twisted neck, just off things. It can be manifest physically within the body, and the things that they've been to doctors, they've had several types of treatment for, they never knew what it was. And then they can go and see these therapists and find out that it was just, it happened right there at their birth, at their delivery, whether it be by forceps, whether it be by cesarean section, whether they were sucked out by a vacuum. All of these delivery methods have
Wow.
great impacts on the being, not only auric field, not only energetically, but physically, um, so we really have to take care, right there at the birthing process, to make sure that none of those methods are used, because they're violent,
They're
and
very
and
violent.
and they're fracturing the soul. They split
Yeah.
the soul. um, and they create masses of problems. Like I say, we go through our lives to pull ourselves back together, and it's not, we don't ever feel right or complete or whole until we do. And to be fair, it's an ongoing process. Imagine if you were born into this world with all that you are, and you were able to be just that from birth.
From the
Imagine
beginning.
what exactly. Well, what would you be? You'd be a force to be reckoned with in this world. You know, imagine if
Very
we
much
all
so.
were, we wouldn't, the earth wouldn't look the way that it does, you know,
Right.
in terms of all the degradation and the rape and the violence and all the things that take place upon the earth. I mean, if we were all born completely knowing who we are, we
Right.
wouldn't see that
Hmm.
because we'd know the truth.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on something that you spoke about last week, um, the last birth that you've had, and the being wasn't able to go through the full gestation period, but yet
Ah, yeah.
uh, you, well, not the last one, the one before the last, where you noticed you had the one son who was physical and the one being that was
Ah, yeah.
non-physical. Let's talk
Non-physical.
about that.
Yeah. So that was my third child. I was pregnant, and I wasn't pleased about the pregnancy at the time. And so I done my best to hide it. And I'd visited a church, and a woman came over to me and she said, "Oh, if I was to ask you if you were pregnant, what would you say?" And then she said, "You know, because I'd thought about asking your friend, but the spirit said to me not to ask your friend, to come and ask you directly." So I said, "Well, yes, I am." And had she gone and asked my friend, she wouldn't have got the answer anyway, because my friend didn't know. So
Right.
she was right to come directly and listen. So she came directly, and then she said, "You know, spirit told me that, you know, this birth, it's for a reason. You might not understand what it's for, but it's you know, where you were going." She said, you were going in that direction so fast that this was to slow you down. And she said, but it's all for a higher reason. And when you rub your belly, don't just rub it once, rub it twice, once for the physical baby, and the other for the soul or for the spirit. So what she was saying was that it was like I was having twins. And it's funny because this child was born June the 20th. Under Western astrology, this is a Gemini sign, and Gemini is a twin. And she said, rub it once for the child and once for the spirit. So there were twins in there. There was a spiritual being, you know, alongside my physical son as well. She even said to me that when you name your child, to ask the Lord, and it'll reveal it to you. And the thing was, again, with this baby, before I really knew I was pregnant, I heard in the spirit, "You're having a baby, and his name is Emmanuel." And so when she said that, I just burst out crying, because I'd already been given the child's name. Like, everything she said to me was really on point, and it was what I was feeling, because the reason why I was hiding the pregnancy was because it didn't fit in with my life in that moment. I just got a new job, blah blah blah, you know, all of these things. So I couldn't understand. I was like, why now? You know, any time in my life, why am I having this child? So everything that I'd literally been struggling with in the secrecy of my own mind,
Hmm.
she came and revealed to me, and she said that spirit had told her. So this is the thing, it's like the souls of these children, the souls of these babies, when they, like what Holly was saying, the baby last week when she spoke about the ultrasound, maybe she should come in and speak about that.
Yes.
But when the soul speaks, the souls of these babies, they speak to us. They have messages, they carry messages. And if you're a faithful servant, I'm just going to say it like that, and you speak the message just as it's told, you don't doctor it, you don't change it to suit yourself, you don't think, oh, how stupid does that sound, and refrain from speaking it. You just say it as you've been told. It's a massive message for the mothers and for the people that are hearing these messages, and it makes their whole life make sense when
Hmm.
they could have never got those answers anywhere else. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do. And I appreciate you telling your story. Holly, have you had any similar experience being a ultrasound healer all these years?
Well, I wasn't a healer at that time. I
Uh-huh.
wasn't awakened at that time.
Okay.
But I certainly
How many
saw
years were you ultrasound?
22 years, and
22 years.
I taught it as well
Mm-hmm.
to many other people. So, but strangely enough, OB was not my favorite. It was too traumatic, too emotional,
Mm-hmm.
and I never looked forward to that. Of course, now I have a completely different perception, but you mentioned, Lex, I said something about ultrasound, some experience. Can you remind me what
Yes,
that
it was
was?
with the Yael, when the baby was in the womb and its face popped up and
Oh,
it had a
well,
message for the mother.
that was not through ultrasound. That was actually um, on Facebook. I
Oh,
was just scrolling one day, and as it goes down, there was this picture of this little baby, and I assumed it was the mother who said, "What do you sense? Dot dot dot." And the moment I looked into its eyes, it connected with me, and the first thought that came to my mind was, "Oh my gosh, this is Yael. This is a Yael soul." And I had nothing, knew
Well,
nothing
let's
about.
explain what a Yael soul is first, for those who don't know.
Okay, well, a Yael is another worldly being, race, alien. They don't like the word alien, um, but they're typically around 4 feet tall, humanoid, arms, legs, 3 fingers, 3 long fingers, and palm. They typically travel in threes. You don't usually see one alone. It's always in a group of three, and there's a leader of the other two. Big eyes, no hair, larger head, so skinny little body, kind of really ET-ish sort of.
Yeah.
Um, but they're gentle souls, and I've had some experiences with them. Pretty sure I still have an implant from them. They're just monitoring me, and I also have Yale DNA.
So the baby you saw on Facebook, would you
Yes,
say it was a
it
hybrid?
no
No.
no.
So where did the baby picture come from?
The mother posted it. The
It
mother
must have been
post
a being, a physical being that was born
no.
there.
The I later, well, anyways, as I saw this face, it was it connected with me because I'm a medium, and I it told me about itself and why it came, and I quickly wrote everything down that it told me, and a little nervous, and texted it to the mom, everything it said. And unbeknownst to me, that baby was no longer alive. um, it was less than a year old, and it just had come specifically to experience gestation, birth, family, siblings, the whole human earth, um, a family experience.
Mm-hmm.
The love, the care, that's so different from their own culture. And they, uh, it was just what she needed to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And the baby just came to experience that, and it knew before it even came that it was only going to be here for a little while,
Okay.
just to experience that family environment. and the emotions. It was really adamant about saying it was all the emotions of the whole process it wanted to experience.
So it basically experienced its emotions and maybe its mother's,
Oh yes, the whole family.
the whole
But
family.
I think it had one or two older brother and sister, perhaps not too much older, and mom and dad, and I think they even had a pet. So I wanted to experience all of that firsthand, just short term. So it knew it wasn't going to stay, and mom pretty well completely understood all that. Just it was new to her to know that, but it made sense to her, she said.
So some beings come through the mother just to experience, even if it's a short time, what it's like to be a human.
Right.
That's amazing. Um, yes, sometimes it's there as well to teach the mother about life itself or to awaken the mother. Oh, that's beautiful, love. Yeah, so I how amazing is life itself? And we're starting to understand that life isn't just physicality, it's also the soul in physicality. Um, and so when we understand this, we have this two portions of ourselves. Even though we are human beings right now in this physical body, we have a whole soul that is still there, that is non-physical, that we're still connecting to as well. You want to speak to that, Holly?
It, it only that just where our souls are so vast and
So,
varied and limitless, particularly us older souls, and almost daily I have new versions of me coming back to strengthen my current soul fractal, and uh,
yes.
a lot of just amazing,
Yeah.
amazing,
I,
overwhelming sometimes.
yes.
We're so huge. We are so huge.
Yes, our spiritual selves, our soul selves are just immense when it comes to energy and power and connection to the universe and knowledge. I mean, it's amazing. I have the same experience when every day I discover something new about myself, whether it's connection to light or frequency and information, uh, connection to other aspects as well of myself. um it's one of those things where sometimes you don't know if you're coming or going or if you're one species or another species. It's really interesting. It becomes like a self hunt, like you're hunting down who you truly are. So it's like that egg, the Easter egg hunt, when you're like looking for everything and finding everything new and different every day. uh yeah, Lex, Gurden,
Yeah,
do you have anything to
yeah.
say to
m-
this?
My fourth child, Rhea, um, I, she was the last child that I had in a hospital, but
Mm,
I had to fight literally to have the birth that I wanted,
mm-hmm,
and so she was really the premise for me to change everything.
mm-hmm,
And when she was born, because I did bring her into the world consciously,
mm,
she now she was like what, 3 years old, and she was like perfectly well spoken, and she used to tell me, she'd say, oh, um you're not my mum, don't you? Well, she's like, you're not my first mum. I had another mother before you, she said. And she started to describe her other mother. She said, yeah, and we didn't live here, we didn't have this house, we had this other house. And then she'd start to describe the house, and then I was like, oh yeah, yeah, really? She's like, She's like, yeah, yeah. So I'd be like, oh, tell me more, tell me more. And she'd just sit and chat about it. And then me and her father, we were living in separate places at that time. And she went to visit him. And she said exactly the same thing to him. And then I said to her, oh, yeah, you were talking to Dad about your family, weren't you? You know, the one that you had before. I was like, tell me about him again. So I started to listen really attentively to see if anything shifted in her story. And the 3 times that she told it over like a space of time, it never changed. It was always the same story. And because it was consistent, I had to believe that what she was saying was her truth. And we moved to Ecuador. She was about 5, 6 at this time. And one night we were laying together and she says, Mom, you know, you're not my you know you're not my mom, don't you? And then she said that she felt sorry. Sorry, a call tried to come in. Yeah, she said she felt sorry for me. That like she felt sorry for the fact that I had to listen to her telling me that I'm not her mother. And she so she was very like, you know, like consciously aware about what pain she might cause me by telling me this truth, but she was telling me anyway. And then she said, you know where we're from? She went, do you think we look like this? And in that moment, she lifted her 2 hands and she looked at the palms of her hands and she turned them over and looked at the other side. And she looked me right in my eye and she said, we don't look like this. She went, we're like air. And when she said it, it like sent goosebumps through my body, and like I knew what she was speaking about. But how did she know that? How did she know these things? But this is what I feel is when the babies come through like this and their souls are not fractured, they do have the ability to keep intact all the information of the soul. And some children, they lose it around 4 years old. This is what I've come to learn later on. They lose it around 4 years old. But this was my daughter at 5, 6 telling me this story, which she had told me around 3. And then she, you know, with that added information about us, like, we're not from here. And she's like, we're like air. No, she went, yeah, like the wind. She went, we're like the wind, something like that.
Mental.
I was just like, wow,
Hey.
whoa. So, yeah, upon hearing you and Holly speak just now, that story just came back to me. I was like, I wanted to share that.
That's
And
lovely.
the other thing that I experience that I have with souls is the hummingbird. So every time I was going to work with somebody in Ecuador, a hummingbird would show up. So I had taken the hummingbird as a sign that that this was the right person for me to work with, because the hummingbird has acknowledged it, and that's how I had taken it to begin with. But as time evolved in this practice, what I came to understand is that the hummingbird represented the soul of the baby, in fact carried almost, or the soul of the baby could use, if you like, the vehicle that is a hummingbird to come to me. And it wasn't the parents that were choosing me, it was actually the baby, the soul of the child, that was choosing to have that birth that way. And the thing is, these births, they never were really easy and straightforward. And like, for example, the majority of the babies that I've seen come through, they actually were born with the cord around the neck. Now, in the establishment, if you were to have a baby's cord around the neck, that can be an excuse for a cesarean section, for example. Whereas all these babies were born perfectly well and they had their cords around the neck. And they were choosing me because they knew that I'd be able to support them to have the entry onto this earth plane that they were desiring. And this further got confirmed because I know a woman, her name's Wendy, and she's very childlike, and she's very in contact with plants and crystals, and they speak to her, and fairies and things like that. She has these conversations with them. And there was a woman that was pregnant that she knew and I knew, and her name was Linda. And she said there are two hummingbirds hovering over her stomach. And the reason why she'd not given birth yet is because there were two souls that wanted to incarnate, but there was only one vehicle in her womb at that time. And therefore, between the two souls, they had to decide um, which one would go in. And until they made that decision and they'd come to that agreement, obviously the baby had to stay put until the decision was made. Well, as soon as they did decide, so Linda went over, then that soul chose. But she said it was two hummingbirds hovering above her baby. And at that time, because I was supposed to support Linda, I kept seeing in dreams even, and then coming to visit me. And then because it might not have been me, because I was going to leave the country and go to Jamaica, I'd supported someone else to be there with her instead of me in my absence. And she also got the visitation of the hummingbirds. So, and it was funny because they were doubles, they were twos. So someone else had confirmed this. And this is so true for me and meaningful for me, with the souls and the hummingbird. Just going to show you something very quickly. That I had a tattoo.
Your video is off.
I'm going to show you. Sorry.
Okay.
It's, see
There
it.
you
Oh,
are.
there it is.
Lovely. Oh,
So
that's a
the
beautiful
tattoo
bird. Yeah.
is there, and underneath is the lotus flower.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because that's represents the baby's births. The
Mhm.
the lotus flower because of the placenta, the
Yeah.
placenta and the navel. Because that's another thing. The cutting of the cord,
Mhm.
that they do, that's an act of violence upon the body.
Mhm.
And we shouldn't be cutting the baby's severing the baby's umbilical cord, because the placenta is also seen like the twin of the baby. And when they were together and they matured together, they've spent like about 8 months together in the womb, and nurture, and obviously that placenta has nurtured that baby and fed it and really kept it alive. And actually the placenta is the midwife in the equation, and I see it as God in the equation, because the placenta is the thing, the intelligence, the conscious intelligence that decides whether a pregnancy is viable and should continue or not. So if we're trusting the process, then we're trusting in the role of the placenta. Then we're letting the placenta decide. And so therefore, when the baby's born, we've got this term, and it's called the lotus birth. And that's where the baby is born, and then the placenta is born after the baby in its natural time. Now, this is usually cut, clamped, and forced out by an injection. So we don't do any of that. We let it come out, and then basically what happens is the placenta and the baby, as one unit, they remain together, and they have a mutual agreement between them that, oh, we are like we've fulfilled our contract, for want of a better term. And then they detach naturally and they let each other go. And that's such an honoring of the entire birth process, instead of really cutting that baby's lifeline away from it just like that. So yeah, there's so much. I mean, I could talk all day, week and all year about these things. But yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
Lovely. Lovely. And your idea of the twin, that's striking a chord with me in my mind and in myself, because when I was younger, I always thought I was a twin. Like I had a twin out there somewhere for some reason. And it wasn't until my awakening that I had a dream, and I saw another woman in the dream, and she looked just like me. I looked at her eyes, I looked at her face, and she looked just like me, but the consciousness there was not me. And what she told me is she is of the water as I am of the land. So her spirit and her being lives in the ocean, while my spirit and my being lives.
Your audio went out again, Sarah. Yeah, your audio went off right in the middle of your explanation.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, now it's back. All right. Yeah. So
Okay.
so you're of the land and she's of the water and what?
Yes. She's of the water. She was, her whole entire being was, she was raised to be of the water. She comes from her ocean, but she looks just like me, but she has a different types of frequency of consciousness. And I was really shocked to find that out. So when you say, you had a physical birth and then you had a non-physical birth, that really strikes a chord with me, because I think I was the same way. I actually, now that we're speaking about it, I know I was the same way. And that's a different reality that hadn't even occurred to me, but I knew for some reason, from my teenage years, I kept having the feeling that I was a twin. Isn't that amazing?
That is so amazing. I love it when people have experiences that are a confirmation for what's taking place, because it's very hard to verify the things that are non-material, aren't they? The
Yeah,
things that you can't see, and yet we know that they exist, and we can only really find the evidence thereof in each other, and in our very own personal experiences, and the sharing of those.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Dan, you have anything to say to this?
Yeah, but I don't know where to start because there's so much that this is one of those weird, strange topics that expand into so many unseen areas that people sense are there but never had the proof, right?
Yeah,
And then here's a small collection of people with their experiences that verify and validate these hidden truths, and that there's a lot more going on
yeah,
than just what meets the eye. And we've come to learn these things and know of these things, and adjust accordingly with the new information. And this new information wants to expand and needs
yeah,
to expand, and that's what prompted this whole recording. But as so that's a thing. And then other things are, all the different ways in which information is passed, where even there are accepted forms of information passing, and then there are these less traditional forms of information passing, and this is absolutely less traditional. But I'd like to say, just because it's less conditional doesn't devalue it that perhaps even this should mean more than the traditional accepted forms of messaging and
And knowledge.
information passing. That information passing isn't just, oh, somebody else said it, so, oh, somebody else wrote it down, or somebody else, and so everybody has accepted it. Oh, because, oh, so and so wrote this down 100 years ago, so this is it. Well, it's just like, well, 100 years has changed since then, and maybe that's moved and shifted just a little bit, because as you get into these broader ideas, and you learn that change is the only constant of the universe, that nothing ever stays the same.
Yeah.
So even this is changing, that the form of message, the less traditional forms of messaging on this planet are all amplifying, and
Yes.
that's a thing. So that's another thing that's going on. And then people are remembering now. So, and Lex was saying that a lot of people, a lot of people, people coming into their information, people coming to learn this stuff, coming to know this stuff.
Yeah.
And I know something that I say that some people don't understand is that I was born in a very thick density. And what I mean by that is a very disconnected, very, very thick density, to where even if you knew the truth, you still couldn't do anything about it, because the reality was so solid feeling that everything seemed to move very slowly. And now everything seems to move really, really quickly. So I'm one of those interesting beings that, even though I was born in density, I've still somehow managed to get this far. When I look at other people my age, they just do not. They're just hard-headed, stubborn things. And it's not that I'm not that. I'm still that. I'm both. Like, I'm like the Snickers bar. Like, it's all in there, right?
Yeah.
It's all in there. It's all moves around, and it's everything else. Or a ragu, maybe ragu, where it's all in there. I forget. One of them.
I
He's a
understand.
stew. So
I
then that's a thing. So there's then to address the less physical, or the quad. So addressing physicality, addressing non-physicality, and then the in-between of the quasi-physicality.
Wow.
All right.
Yes.
So now we have this trinity of physicalities here to work with. And it's just like, try to wrap your mind around that. So there's actually like 3 different states of being that look like we look like we're just this body, but we're actually this less physical and then non-physical.
Mm-hmm.
Here again, it's like the accepted form of communication, where everybody just accepts that, oh, we're physical, and that's what we are. So, yeah, that's what we are, but that's not all we are.
Wow.
And some people are very connected to their quasi-physical self and their non-physical selves. We're not just a human being and then that's it. There's so much more. And then that is a thing. So
Mm-hmm.
here's all these different big things that are, that you can wrap your mind around kind of all at once.
It takes
What?
time to integrate that information into your awareness,
Yeah,
because
it does
there's
take a
a
while.
being who doesn't like think like you, but it looks like you in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, yeah,
You literally have to sit there and say, what did I just see? Who was that being? Who is that person? Right?
yeah,
And you think
yeah.
it's you, but it's not you. And you can tell because the consciousness is different.
Oh, yeah. It's just like some Alexa's experience, because I've had similar experiences where somebody will walk up to me for no reason, just completely out of the blue, so to speak, and just start telling you stuff. And they'll just be on point and just like, oh yeah, that's gone on and this has happened. And they give you all this pertinent information. So there's no way to tell by looking at a person with your physical eyes how connected to non-physicality they are, or what kind of universal intelligence that they're tapped onto.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, there's just no way, not yet. So you either trust the information that comes or you don't. And so they come to you and all of their meekness and they say, hi, I'm a stranger, but I got some information for you.
Yeah.
And you can take it and you can, use your discernment or whatever, so the invitation for discernment, and then say, but here's the information I have to give to you, and then you just blah, 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 and you purge out all the information.
And then you leave.
And then you go, well, I hope that's good for you. I'll see you later.
See you later.
Or
Bye.
see you never. I mean, sometimes, most of the time it's see you never, because you never see them ever again. It's just like, well, here's that thing. I hope it's great for you, and then off you go. And then for me, I've both done that and then been that, so it's kind of strange. Like, oh,
You
but
play
then,
both roles.
yeah, it's so, and then that's a thing. So there's all these things that are really quite deep and quite sometimes hard to grasp and quite very damn interesting, just so damn interesting. But then again, it's like, it's just this huge, big, neat thing.
Yeah. Holly, do you have anything to say to this?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
No, I've had a million things going through my mind. So I'm just kind of listening and waiting till something runs up. Yeah.
Until the next information bubble expands.
I find
something Dan said last week. He said about remembering being smacked on the bottom.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I know I'm one of those few people. I remember being born.
Go ahead and tell your story.
So there was a piece of that. Yeah, I remember being born, and I didn't. Man, that was strange. So I remember being born. I was very aware when I was born. I knew, like, okay, I'm being born, and the beings are around and say, okay, you're going to go through this process, and it's going to be weird. And it's like, all right, and say, okay, here you go. And then you're going to feel like hands on you for the first time. You're going to feel all this stuff, and it's weird. And one of the very first things I noticed was how cold it was. It was absolute cold. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It's like freezing. What kind of ice planet is this? This is terrible. And then what I didn't realize until much later is that when you're born, you're wet, right? And if you're wet in a 70-degree room and you were just a moment ago 98 degrees and now you're 70 and you're wet, and if there's a breeze in that room, you're cold. And so the very first thing that you sense right when you come out of the womb is how flipping cold it is.
Wow.
So then I thought, wow, that's terrible. Why do we
Dan, I wanted to tell you just a little snippet of information, being I worked in surgery before, particularly around the time I was born into probably the 70s. All surgical suites were kept much colder because they believed if there's warmth in the surgical suite, it would propagate reproduction. So it was like maybe 60 in there.
Whatever.
They kept it really cold.
It was flipping frigid. I remember that. And so
it's
the first
different
thing,
now, but
it was overwhelming, almost overwhelming. And then you're cold, and then I didn't know I was being spanked. I thought, I don't know, it was some kind of traumatic thing. I thought I was being eaten.
Wow.
And they had to sit in the beings that were like with me go, no, you're not being eaten. You're not being eaten. No, it's okay. And I go, no, I'm dying. I'm going to leave. And they're like going, no, don't leave. And it's like, you have to stay. We didn't know this was going to go on, and you need to just stay. And it's, no, I don't know. You're killing me. It's, no, you're not dying. Honestly, it'd be all right. And then sometime later, I guess, once they finally got me pulled out and dried off and rinsed off and everything, and the trauma from the spanking stopped, But that was back in the day when they spanked babies to get them to take their first breath. But that's traumatic because the baby screams. So your very first energy into the planet is you think you're dying and you're screaming. Because, you don't know.
I
But
have a question. When did we go from women birthing like a midwife to going into the hospital and there's men birthing the children for the women?
well, they were concerned about the mortality rate. So I know of my family, well, so there's my parents. So my parents were the first people in their families to have all their children born in a hospital. So my brother and sister and I were born in a hospital.
This was the 60s?
Yeah, I was born in the early 60s. My siblings were born in the late 50s. So, yeah, so it's different. So I'm going to say popular hospitals began becoming popular like in the 60s.
And then all the doctors were male on
Because,
top
well,
of it.
most of the doctors were male then, yeah, before specialties and stuff. Before that,
So
it was like nuns and nurses and nurseries
exactly,
and
it was
things.
all
And
women
it
birthing
was,
the children.
and then before that, it was the midwife idea and the other and
Exactly.
clergy and things and stuff. And yeah, it was different then.
And then when
But
it
they
went
would
into
go
the
to the
hospital, that's
hospital
when the
because
stacks
of,
began happening, huh?
well, they would go to the hospital because of fear, right? Because complications, because some people were dying due to birthing complications. And if
Mm,
they didn't want to die, they would go to the hospital where it would improve their chance of survival. Because birthing is complex thing, and you could be fine one minute and not fine the next minute.
mm-hmm.
And so this, we're going to go to the hospital. So at least, we'll live and, we'll have another baby later, where sometimes, you know, mothers would die during childbirth quite often just because of complications, something moved or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then again, hospitals made it possible for a lot of beings to incarnate that would not have incarnated otherwise. And so who co-created hospitals, it's interesting how energy propagates, so some babies didn't get to incarnate because their mothers passed during the childbirth thing and it just got too much. So it's, let's make hospitals. All right, so hospitals get invented. So you can see how the energy expands just on that one singular idea. So
Yeah.
then it's like, wow, everybody can incarnate now. Come on, everybody. And now there's 7 billion of us on the planet, right? So it's worked out pretty well for the most part. Because a lot of,
Right.
because you can see some of the beings and go, wow, what, you incarnated here? Wow, should you have? Sometimes you wonder, right? So don't watch commercial television, it'll rot your mind. So yeah, so it was strange. And then after being born and then realizing I wasn't being eaten and realizing I wasn't dying and realizing, then they got me all cleaned up and then they put me, I guess, in my first blanket or swaddling stuff or whatever, and then put me in the nursery. And then in the nursery, I was aware of like all the beings in the nursery, all the other babies.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about stuff like what we were doing, what our goals were, why did we incarnate here, what was going on, what we were doing. And it's like, and then as they would pick them up and feed them, they would kind of like get disconnected. And so we'd eventually, I began losing contact with them until there was this one girl. She was on the side of me. She was the closest one. And they kind of did us near each other. They fed us at near the same time consistently. And so when we were disconnected similarly. And then when we reconnected, we were able to reconnect. So I was able to stay connected to her the longest. And so I was able to communicate with her the most. And until we finally left there, and then I was like taken home for the first time. And then I was disconnected from all of them.
Wow.
But that was weird because it established that that I knew I had that connection while I was there, that I must have connection with others. So it's like I've been feeling like I've been putting out a call, for a really long time for anybody who I can pick up. Right? You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
your ESP is on like all the time. It's like your feelers are out all the time. It's like, oh, okay, what's out there? What's talking. And then it took me a long time to find out, oh, I'm getting messages there. And then my dreams were very vivid and very real when I was young. I had a lot of precognitive dreams when I was young, especially in my teens. It was really intense during my teens. So it's
Excellent.
interesting. So I can
So much.
I can verify kind of what Lex was saying, that if a baby is allowed to stay connected, that they'll do better and be able to step into more of their power, even though it was less for me, but I still feel very connected now. But I've had to, like she said, I've had to come to it. I've had to fight for it. I've had to, you know, enjoy my expansions such as they were, because
Mm-hmm.
my journey comes from that particular density, and I take that into consideration when I'm talking to people, and I wonder, oh, what was their density like, what was their upbringing like, were they able to stay connected at all in their upbringing, were they able to do this, or did they get, are they a walk-in, or are they this, or are they some kind of step in, or any other thing, or did they just have an awakening? Did they accidentally trigger their kundalini or something when they were like 10? Or have they had an experience? Did they have trauma? Did they do something else that shocked, jarred, connected, reconnected, disconnected something? So it's like all these things that when you're talking to somebody, you're running all these equations through your mind to see where they stand energetically, and that's a thing. It's kind of like, oh wow. But for me, where it comes from is it all stems from that really strange birth of being able to remember, kind of what's there, and then remember it. So here I am, I'm going to be 58, what, in a week and a half, something, whatever. What's
Happy
today?
birthday.
Yeah, 11 days. And so then it's like, oh, I remember this stuff, and I see how that stuff's been helpful through my journey, to this point and stuff. And so that's been pretty good. So it is beneficial, the information that comes and how we're able to spread. So like said, parents want their kids to be whatever successful, and then they have ideas of what that success is.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that is a thing. But I'm going to say, I have seen people, even young people, I've seen single mothers whose life is very complex with really strange, bad relationships and stuff and things, and lots of fighting with the family and parents. And they're trying to raise a child, but they're still spiritually awakening through all of that diversity. And I'm thinking, wow, I was able to awake through a pretty thick density, and I was still able to do it. And I really find a deep respect for people who are awakening through adversity. And it's just like, oh, wow, look at that energy come. It's like nothing is stopping that.
Right.
Nothing is stopping that. Look at the momentum that thing has. And then you look across the board at that energy and go, wow, look at all the beings that have expanded through adversity. And it's just like, wow, that's just flipping amazing. I don't know if there's a way to gauge that,
Mm-hmm.
but man, creation's a pretty powerful thing. And
Yes.
we're all a piece of that. And so I don't know. Now I'm starting to feel like I'm rambling a little bit, and I'm looking at the time, and I'm wondering if we should let this be a good close to this portion of the recording. And
Well,
maybe
uh,
some blessings, and let this recording stand. And then if we come up with another topic, we'll have something to record for Thursday.
well, let's see if Lex and Holly have anything more to say before we close out.
All righty.
Lex?
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, you're still there.
Mm.
You know, I would wanted to pick up something that you'd asked, the question that you'd asked Sarah about the hospitals and the invention of the hospitals and why they got involved in birth.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that has to do with playing God. And it can be another conversation for another time. But having a conversation such as this, speaking about birth, it's not really complete unless we're also understanding death as well, because it's part of a birth, death, and rebirth cycle that always is, always has been, and always will be. And therefore, it's looking at birth and death in its entirety, and why somebody or some establishment would be created to intervene in that process has a lot to do with how they view that. So perhaps we could look at that like maybe next Tuesday or something.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful idea. Holly?
I'm good.
Okay.
My perspective is very different from what you're talking about. So I'll wait till another day for that thought process.
Okay.
And it's all wonderful. And thank you, Lexi, for your wonderful experiences you shared with us all.
And thank you all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Everybody. Yeah.
you. Yes, thank you, everyone.
Does anyone want to close out with a prayer?
So I got tickled right there. So I want a hot dog. Can I have a hot dog?
Yeah, did you hear her? I was like, yeah, just get out. Yeah.
Lex, would you like to close
That's
out with a
great.
small prayer?
Okay. Thank you so much for this space and this time and this moment to gather here together. It's a beautiful opportunity to share, and I'm so grateful for it, to share our minds, our hearts, and our energy, and that we're able to be open as receivers and also transmitters, and that that we're able to use what we can to what resonates with us.
Mine's here.
Excuse me.
But mine's here.
All right, just go out the door a second. Thank you, sweetheart. Apologies.
That's
To
all right.
whatever resonates with us, to that we're able to embody that and to really see ourselves as whole beings, that all of our experiences are valid, and to the makings of us and the soul expressions that we are and have come to be upon this planet, and that we're able to enrich each other and encourage each other and sharpen each other, and let us continue on in this wonderful way. And I say all that, and I close there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Dan?
Oh no, that was really good. No, the only message I can think of right now, on top of all the cool stuff that was mentioned, the only thing that I would wish for everybody, that no matter what you're doing, if you can spiritually awaken, please focus as much energy as you can on that, to no matter whatever level of awakening that you can attain, but just aim towards awakening. That'd be the best thing that you could do while you're incarnated here.
Beautiful.
Anyway, I would pass that along. What you
Holly?
got? No, Holly already said she didn't have much.
Oh,
Well, thank you, Dan. That was beautiful, and I thoroughly agree. Having experienced that same concept in the same way, so that you were a part of. Thank you.
mhm.
You're welcome.
Would you like to offer a prayer? Holly?
Certainly. Let's do A light language one. Hatiasha Sataya Nakatsalia Nama Aikia, Shasananai Kitasanama Asakaranja Sareki, Aturama Asakaraja Sakinanama Asalanin Kia Shasanama Sakia Chasana, Atutia Sananamakia Laninama Chesikina, Sashasana Ikaraini Chasatikinia. Namaste. Blessings to all.
Namaste.
Namaste.
All right, I'll go. Sialanira. Kiala tu shialiaha. Kayo shuni tihisilu tu. He salatai tu shilatana. Kyo tu shanai si halata aya. He suati sinaya. Kai sinu kutusha. Kai unuahi. Kia saituna. Hasiatinu. Kai sikai nepia. Hayatu shilatia. Keosoga. Hanaya. Korishiatina. Kalai tisioata. Namaste.
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 Mommy.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close. Here we
Wait.
go.
Let's
Oh,
thank
what you
everybody
want?
for coming.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, everybody in YouTube land, Facebook land,
It's
internet land for coming and watching the show and participating with us. We love you. You can find us at Conversations with Sarah on Facebook or Sarah Oxidine on YouTube and sarahoxidine.com if you would like a session. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, and, becoming part of the conversation. So I love you. I love you. I love you. Namaste.
I'd like to add, just before we go, that if you find this recording and you like the information in these recordings, and if you know anybody else that could use this information, please share the link
Yes.
with your friends or like-minded ones so that this energy can propagate and this information can propagate to the places it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, please do that if you
Yes.
will. Yes, thank you. All right, bye for now.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.